I'm Sonia Ducey. I'm a numerologist and I'm a teacher at the Knason School of Numerology in Hertfordshire. And I've been practicing numerology. Numerology has fascinated me now for about 22 years. And it's an ongoing process. It's not like with numerology that you know everything. So, because you've been practicing a long time and I've written books and I give lectures and things, it's actually that life teaches us about numbers. So I'm really keen to hear all your questions tonight because that's what's important. That's how we grow, that's how we learn. So what is numerology? So numerology is the science, psychology and philosophy of numbers, and it's based on the numbers 1 to 9. And if we look at all those different aspects, so we say it's a science. Numerology is a science because the whole world is made up of moving atoms of energy. As we know, we're all little energy bubbles bouncing into each other, merging with each other. And in fact, these seats we're sitting on are not real, they're not material, they're just energy slowed down to a more solid vibration. So everything is energy. And so therefore numbers are not black and white digits on a page, they're actually moving atoms of energy. So when we're talking about numbers, we're talking about movement. Then we say it's the philosophy of numbers, and a philosophy means the way by which you learn, you grow. There's many different philosophies in life. So it's a way by which we achieve something else. In this case, more intuition, more wisdom, more experience. And then it's a psychology. The psychology of numbers really means that, like when you look at economic forecasts and things like that, you can look back to the past, you can look to previous cycles, and you'll see exactly what was happening at that time in those cycles in your life, in our little lives, in the world. And we can learn from those cycles, but that's about going back. And then there's a fourth element to numerology, and that's all about using the intuition or going into the unknown. And that's really what I want to focus on tonight. That's how I started. It's not that I know everything about number or numerology or know a lot. It's that I'm here learning each moment, each day, about how these wonderful number cycles influence our lives. So then we have to go back to the zero. And the zero is the potential. And the potential for everything and nothing. Everything comes out of the void. It's a bit like, have you heard that the melting pot, everything goes into the melting pot. It goes back to zero. Because we take our next experience out of that potential. So, yeah, so all the numbers 1 to 9 are actually materialized out of the zero. So we clearly know that the numbers 1 to 9 govern life. They govern everything from economics to the time of birth, the date of birth, cycles, birth and death. Everything goes in cycles. And we also know that these cycles repeat themselves over and over again. And we say we give them a number, the numbers 1 to 9, but the numbers 1 to 9 are really a blueprint for for the kinds of experience we can create out of that cycle of movement of energy. We go back to energy, we're going back to the void, we're going back to the nothing. So the numbers 1 to 9, so for example, this year we're in 2015, which adds up to an 8. And so we're going to look at how the last time we were in an 8 cycle, that might be influencing us now, and how we can actually make our future potential out of that 8 cycle to recreate things so we don't repeat the past or repeat past mistakes, and we can also tap into its future potential by going into this void. So where is the void in the numbers? Any ideas where the void is?
In the center.
In the center, yeah. Within? In the space, in the nothing. This air is full of energy. This air is full of movement. So we go inside within ourselves and we connect with intuition. And that's the other ingredient that we need in order to be able to give a numerology reading or to really allow the numbers to speak to us. We need intuition. And that can be as simple as like when you go into an art gallery and you gaze at a painting, and as you gaze, that painting takes you deeper and deeper, and then suddenly you've lost the room, you don't remember who you are, you can't feel your body, you're actually out of time and space, as we say, and you're in the void, you're in the energy behind the physical, and that's what we're looking at with numbers. When we look at numbers, we gaze, and somehow just by, not through the internet, not like saying number 1 is a new beginning, or number 6 is for a relationship, or whatever, we're not looking at it like that. We're actually looking at it anew, so that that number, whether it's a date or the birth date or a personality number, is going to give us the information that we need at that moment in time. So it's very important to be very fluid with numbers. Okay, so what is numerology used for? It can be used to help somebody understand more about their behaviour. It can actually be applied to connect with a deeper soul purpose of an individual's lifetime. And we say one little lifetime is a short time, as we know. But there is plenty of time to learn those deeper lessons. And then, so the personality number is taken from the day in the month you were born on. The life path number is taken up when you add up the whole date of birth. So they're different vibrations with a different purpose. And again, we're using the same numbers, but in a different way, to look at something different. And then we look at the birth names and we transcribe them into numbers using the alphabet to actually use A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3, and we transcribe them. And they're vibrations. So numbers are actually sound vibrations. We keep coming back to energy, keep coming back to movement. Everything is movement. You know, our heart's always beating, the air's always blowing. Everything in life is movement. So we follow these cycles 1 to 9, and they're going to give us a tremendous amount of information about life. So we can apply numerology to our personal birth chart. That's our names, our full names on our birth certificate, or sometimes pet names, stage names, business names. Everything can be explored through the use of numerology. And we can also apply numerology to a general date or to any kind of situation that's happening in the world. So it literally links us with the past, with the present, with the potential for the future. And the main thing about numerology is that it's a gift to help bring us together. It's a very unifying system is one word to describe numerology, but it actually brings the whole world together, because numerology is a language of numbers which everybody in the world, no matter where they are, can understand. So recently I was teaching some Chinese ladies who one of them spoke English, the other spoke fluent, didn't speak any English, obviously Chinese. And they, but yet through looking at the numbers when we were working together, the lady really had a very good understanding about what was being said. So it's a very unifying system. And then it can be applied to babies' names, to literally any situation. So what I'd really like to do now is to listen to your questions, because that's why I'm here, to answer your questions about numbers. I think I'd like to do is to explain what each part of the birth chart relates to. So we have the day in the month you were born. So who was born on, what date were you born on?
17th of June.
So you add 1 and a 7 is an 8. So 8 personality. But in our system we do also use the 1 and the 7 as sub-influences. Yes, thank you. Anybody else? 12, so again a double digit, so you add the 1, 2 is a 3, so or 12, 3, so your personality number. So the personality number relates to your psychological patterns of behaviour. It relates to your childhood conditioning, and as we know, through understanding, through working on ourselves, through personal development, you can help to release some of those limiting patterns that we picked up in childhood. The next number that we'd like to look at is the life path number, so that's adding up the whole date of birth. And that number is what's called our soul aspiration. People often refer to that as the life purpose number, something that's going to give, or some people call it the fate number, something that's going to give you a direction in life. But this soul number is actually about connecting with the inner light, the light of the soul within ourselves. It's about something deeper. So we have two different aspects of the chart already that actually come together. So the inner and the outer every day are going to work together. Okay, and then we have what's called the soul urge number, which is taken from the full vowels in the names on your birth certificate. And that looks at, if you believe it, past life patterns, or let's say deep entrenched patterns within your soul, the journey of your soul. And it will give you gifts that you've brought back to give you clarity about life. And then the final number, which is adding up all the names on your birth certificate, that's called the overall self-expression number. And that is very much about all the journey of your soul to date. Everything you've learned, all the wisdom is contained within that number. So it's very much going to help you in relationships, in your career, and certainly give you some very strong gifts that you've used in the past that you can apply. You know, sometimes we don't know where gifts come from. People say, it's not in my family. Where does that come from? Actually can come from that overall self-expression number. And then the idea of using the whole chart then becomes a blending, a bit like looking at a painting. You're not going to look at just one part over there, you're going to look at the whole painting. And that's going to then be absorbed into your intuition, into your consciousness, and it's going to give you an overall picture, or a very good, I don't do prediction, it's what's called a very good weather forecast as well, about what the kind of journey you may have in this lifetime. And then we have what's called the personal year number, which changes each year, and again it's based on the numbers 1 to 9, and it's going to give you a flavour for the year. So we can say some years are richer in expansion, some years in contraction, some years in a deeper emotionally, you know, so we have physical, emotional, mental, spiritual aspects of numbers. So for example, the number 2 is more sensitive emotionally, more intuitive, more open. The number 4 might be more practical, but it's also got a very strong mind and will to be able to carry and endure. So each cycle brings something new. And then we actually look at the collective year number, which we know is 2015. If you look at the number 15, it's the number for choice and change. It's all about community. It's looking at the bigger picture. The other side of the number 6 is very much to do with glamour, what's on the surface, do I feel good, do I look good, which is all great because that's part of life. But we know that life can be empty unless we do connect with that inner aspect, which is the soul. So the idea of the 6 is community. If you look at everything that's going on in Europe, very strongly trying to keep Europe together, which is very important. It's a very, potentially very good example of brotherhood, Europe. Pulling together, helping each other through difficult times in order to reach harmony, which is the number 6 year room. And then the other thing about numbers, we have to, you know, people can use it in a black and white way where they say, oh, I'm in an 8 cycle, it's good for buying a property or for money. Yes, it is, and it is potentially good for those things. But we don't go and buy a property. Okay, what I was going to say is we don't necessarily go and buy property in an 8 cycle. We might reevaluate and let go of all the reasons why we're not buying that property. It's all about taking responsibility and reevaluating and cleansing the past, clearing the past, and becoming stronger as a person. So it's best not to look at things in a black and white way. And then we have people, for example, who work in the media. If you look at David Cameron, or you look at Obama, or you look at anybody who takes a very strong leadership role, we know that collectively we have put those leaders in place, and collectively those leaders are representations of the energy of what's going on at any moment in time. So it's not like, so you very much read perhaps somebody saying, oh, I can change the world. You know, when you're young, you think you're going to change the world. But change only happens as a group. Change only happens collectively. We're one soul humanity. And this idea that we're separate is a very old idea. We're coming out of the Piscean age into the Aquarian age of brotherhood. So we need to realize that yes, it's great to have leaders, but they're working together with people seen and unseen. Lots of people working, quote, behind the scenes to achieve peace in various countries around the world. doing the groundwork. So yes, so people do have the power to influence, but it's as a group. Okay, so we know that everything, all the cycles move through us in 1 to 9, and those then form a blueprint for life. So what I would like you to do is to just take a minute, take a second, to kind of go within and think of some situation in your life that's actually resolved. It could be something earlier on in life, but preferably something, it's not a situation now, it's something that's already happened, okay? So picture it clearly in your mind. We could also take a collective situation as well. Okay, but we'll look at your individual. So basically you start off coming out of the zero, a bit like a little shoot out of nowhere that pushes up out of the ground, and we have the number 1. So we know the number 1 is all about new beginnings, new direction, new opportunities, but it's also about will. There has to be a will to do something, and where does that will come from? It actually comes from within us. We think somebody kind of directs us in life, but the push forward, the true direction comes from within, and we know when that's right. So okay, so imagine your situation. So you started in a 1. So let's go for something. So you started something, and then you went into a 2 cycle, or 2 cycle moved through you, and then you weighed up the situation. There might have been a confrontation during that situation in a 2 cycle, and you may have collaborated with others to achieve an aim. But you were weighing up, you were open and receptive, but still working on the idea that you had in the number 1. And then you reach the number 3. And 3 is all about reflection. Now let me reflect on that original idea. What was that about? Did I get the idea right? Is it right in my head? So they're trying to reflect, to recognize what needs to be done. And you've heard the saying, the Trinity in numbers, like we have lucky numbers, like the number 7's often described as lucky, the number 3, but particularly the Trinity is very strongly associated with the number 3, luck, because everything is born out of the 3 or the Trinity. But 3 is, we say 3 in 1. So by the time you get to number 3, you're still playing around with an idea. So whatever happened in your life, there might have been some confusion, chaos, disorganization, or perhaps there was a lot of creative input, but you were trying to bring it together. And then in cycle 4, suddenly something took hold. It's a bit like a shoot has just got its strength and it's starting to take, as we say. The idea has grounded. Or not. In a 4 cycle, it could be that things start to crumble because the idea and the weighing up phase and the reflection phase didn't clarify the blueprint of what needed to manifest. I see some of you nodding, so you recognize that. And you know, there's this thing, the 7-year itch, and there's also the 3-year itch. Because very often people, when they get to a 3, they get very restless, a lot of movement, a lot of instability. And then, so you're anchored in the 4, so you chop wood, carry water, you're going along in life, you're enduring the situation, and taking responsibility, because that's what the 4 cycle is all about. And then you move on to a 5 cycle, and that's change. 5 is right in the middle of a 9-year cycle, so we can't go back, you can't go forward, you're right in the center. And it's an air quality, so we know it's going to lift everything up, maybe move things around. There can be sudden change in a 5 cycle. So reflect on your situation now individually. There's the communication. So 5, so we have communication. Inner communication with the mind and the soul to bring us clarity about what it is we've created. And with the clarity, it could be, oh no, I didn't really want to do it that way. So you might want to make whatever you've created a bit more intelligent, bring emotional intelligence into the situation. And so 5, communication, networking, okay? Information, passing on information. Perhaps you need more information in order to materialize what it is in a better way that you've built. So then you enter a 6 cycle. And then in a 6, it's a bit like a full moon cycle. Everything comes to a head. So everything's been put in, and it's literally reached its peak. So it's a bit like the full pregnant woman in the middle of summer. The seed is ripe, the seed is full. The flower, it's starting to flower. And then it opens up, the 6 opens up, so you have wholeness, choice and change. So by the time somebody arrives at a 6 cycle, we know that they really need to take a step back and look at what it is they've created. But the other side of a 6, which can be self-obsession, going in and in and in, you know, so trying to create perfection in the situation. And as we know, perfection doesn't exist. So then you get sudden explosions of emotion, heartbreak, or things, particularly marriage, children, family, relationship, friendships, communities. We know 6 is to do with also the other side, glamour, everything that makes us feel good and want to be good and look good and feel good. So that's all great. That's glamour as part of society. But as I said, it's about somehow turning from the outer world in a 6 cycle, turning within to connect with the soul and the higher concept, and offering all our gifts. So look in this last 6 years what I've done. I've created a great family life. I've got great friends around me. I've moved countries, look where I am, or I've created this great business. And then suddenly, where do you go to then? If the cup is full, where do you go to? So then you enter a 7 cycle. And 7 is the number for fruition or loss. It's the number for nature. So we know that in nature, some years there's too much rain and the orchard rots. Some years there's not enough rain and the orchard doesn't materialize. So in a 7 year, there can be a lot of kind of deep soul searching needed as a result of a sense of loss, of not achieving what you set out to achieve. But that's okay, because it's going to take us insight, so we have introspection. So Spirit is coming back to make things happen, instigate things, and also this deep sensitivity that comes along with that. And then we enter an 8 cycle. Can you feel the energies yourself? As we're talking about them, they're very different. So you're going to reevaluate. You're going to see if you've actually created that original seed that you had in the 1 cycle. And sometimes in an 8 cycle it requires a cutting of the ties or degeneration. You know, things might start to break down. You notice when you're going through difficult situations, all your electrics start to go a bit funny. Yeah, so, but anyway, on a bigger sense, it's inner strength, tests of strength, and can I stand up and take responsibility. It's also the number for karma, so we know karma not as in a punishment, but karma as in, I need to learn lessons from what I've created. And then the 9 cycle really is an ending and a new beginning. In a 9 cycle you discriminate. It's a bit like taking the wisdom out of the last 8 years of experience, and then you're getting ready for the new 9 cycle that's about to start. So we know in a 9 cycle it can feel a bit like you're in limbo. It's a good time for education, for looking at the facts carefully of what you've created, but often 9 is a melting away, ready for the new start. It's about going back to 0, really, to where we were before, ready to start again. But this time, when we start the new 9 cycle, we're starting it from a position of knowledge and experience. So would anybody like to say what their experience was?
How to work out the cycle we're in right now.
Yes, I can. Yes, you work out the date of your last birthday. Can you do that? So what was your date of your last birthday?
17th of the 6th.
1723. So you've already had your birthday this year.
Yeah.
So you add 23 plus an 8, which is 31. Yes? 31 adds up to a 4, so you're in a 4 cycle. But when we were looking back at the cycle that you've been through, can you recognise perhaps one cycle that tripped you up or one cycle that pushed you forward, or is there any kind of recognition?
Going back to 2006, it was a sort of new beginnings for me. And now this year it's a time of change.
So the 4 is to do with structure and consolidation. So it's about, have you built the right structure, and in the last 3 years, did you get the blueprint right for this structure to be laid? Four can be a very passionate energy when it's all to do with security. So it's a difficult one because also the 4 needs to break open and take risks, because you can get too stuck in the past and too stuck in the routine and the structure.
Yeah, interesting, because I lost my job in March.
Right, so that was created out of that 4 needing to break open.
On the 13th, Friday the 13th.
There you go, so you've got another 4 years. So the numbers do repeat themselves. It's clever. Life is, the intelligence behind us is very clever. Thank you. Yes, absolutely.
Changes are just one change in constantly. It doesn't have this flow to it. You can't see the 0 and you can't see the 1. It's just
What you're saying is that it's very fast? Is that what you're trying to say?
it's like they can't, yes, I mean,
Okay.
you can't really say I'm in the 3 or 4 because it
Yeah.
just seems to be making up as you go along today.
Well, it's a very good analogy of what's happening. Because often when you've missed the lessons, each cycle gives us a little message. It's like messages of truth. So if we miss the message, they build up, first of all, and then there can be quite radical change. But what you're talking about is adaptability, and what you're talking about is many, many years, because we're in this 8th cycle of reevaluation now, deconstructing a structure that no longer fit. That's what's going on. So it's quite radical, because it is karma. Karma means, from what we've been working with, we reach a brick wall, and we can't go over the wall, under the wall. We can only go within ourselves and see, why is this happening? What's it about? How can we work together? Because businesses have to radically change from being separate, the same as we all are, to working together, a bit like big publishers are joining together, or companies. Life is different today. It's all about collaboration. So if you hold on in an 8, it's also about stubbornness, willfulness, domination, not wanting, and control. So for companies or individuals who are more rigid and not wanting to change, it's going to hit them harder. So as society has had many, many messages since the big crash, 2008, and therefore lots of companies have adapted and changed and collaborated, and then you're going to get that resistance. So where the resistance is the strongest, you're going to have more dramatic change.
What I've noticed is that, because I've worked with also the government,
Right.
what I've noticed is that some of them really take the change in heart, and some of them do the surface change, okay, but we're the same as before. We'll just
Or tweak it, yeah. It doesn't last. It won't last for long. We're talking about. We're 2015, 1 and 5, 15, 6 is the number for choice and change. So you've got that influence as well as the 2015. And so the last 6 years, if you can see how much has changed, like for example, we've got Europe, a lot of changes within Europe, which people deem as bad, but it's actually fantastic because it's going to clear out a lot of the old systems and the old way of working in order to bring in a new, hopefully, eventually, can't happen overnight, a new brotherhood. But, for example, the collaboration in the government between Liberal and Conservatives, that was a massive breakthrough of collaboration. And it really would be fantastic if, in an ideal world, all the companies, all the parties got together and collaborated. So we know that's a dream at the moment, but it's something that can happen further down the line. It's about pulling together all our resources to build a better world. So these sound like nice things that I'm talking about, but they really are happening. People around.
It's effective control. No one can influence the way things happen in the way they happened in the past. The control mechanisms have totally changed.
Yeah.
The government is in effect powerless to change a lot of things, which I think they sort of realise, and they're becoming more managerial in terms of trying to gently steer the direction rather than try and achieve a change which isn't going to happen if people don't want it to happen.
Yeah.
And I think if you see the way the governments have worked and what's happened on the international stage, it becomes harder and harder for anyone to actually influence the outcome of events if the majority of the people don't want to go in that direction.
It's wonderful, absolutely, absolutely.
And aren't taking their own responsibility how they've created something.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we saw that a little bit with, I think Obama, didn't we, in the States, where for a while he won the Nobel Peace. Not meaning to look at anyone in particular. Should I wait a minute? Yeah, it's a really good point, that, because in recent years we've seen various world political leaders succumb to the overall energy of the group, really, and then remember that various votes in the House of in Parliament don't go through because of people power now. Facebook's very powerful in helping to bring together people's opinions and different systems like that around the world. So we're realising the connection between us is much stronger. Social media definitely plays a big part in bringing people together. So it is more group already, and it's, as I was saying, it sounds romantic, but it is actually happening, and it's happening from the grassroots up. So in the end, the leaders, we're electing the leaders, so it's up to us to have the courage to say we want collaboration.
Can I ask you a question slightly off the point, but to do with the sort of background of it, which is, I understand the numerology points to do with the numbers 1 to 9 and the name, but what I'm a bit at sea on is the issue of dates, because we're in the Justinian calendar, it was a Gregorian calendar. For instance, the Jewish religion has a completely different calendar, as do certain other religions. So when you're trying to assess what the date is, for instance, XX 2015, this is a purely arbitrary take. So when you're talking about positioning or looking at the numbers in your, for instance, your birth date and this, that, and the other, how are you assuming that there's a general collective consciousness around that assumption of dates in the society, and therefore things are working in that way? I'm just interested.
It's an excellent question, and we look at lots of different calendars in the school, in the Knason school where I teach. We often look at different systems around the world because each culture has its flavour, and I forgot to say there's many different systems of numerology: the Kabbalah, predictive numerology, divination, there's esoteric numerology, which is what I practice. There's so many different systems around the world. And wherever we're born on the planet, all that group consciousness are going to work with that calendar. For example, coming back to the Chinese again, I might actually look at the lunar date of birth and the Western date of birth. I've done that before. But you will find most definite key core characteristics or patterns, soul patterns in that date. But it does relate to the collective consciousness, yes. But remember that the Western calendar does largely govern modern life now. For example, there might be tribes in certain places or certain countries also using their different systems, but it's as well as our calendar. So in a way, it's when we're ready to unite as one humanity, one world, we will kind of, I won't say forget different systems, not that the Western one is right and the others are wrong, but originally the wise men looked at the skies and they read the skies, they looked at the stars in the skies, which are cycles and patterns, and they mapped all this. So time began really relatively recently in terms of thousands of years. But what we can say,
in terms of
our perception, but what we can, and in reality it did happen, you know, so the Chinese and the Hindus, you know, they were quite advanced with numerology, and the Egyptians, so we know lots of different places, and then in Greece, of course, with Pythagoras. But the most important thing is that we observe. I always say, don't believe me, actually observe what, like the first of the month does happens to you. So what I like to say is for you to start observing the numbers as they influence your day-to-day life. So, very early on I noticed the number 4 and 44 kept repeating in my life all the time when I was in my 20s. And that has a very strong meaning now when I look back. I understand what that was about. So, and we'll see that certain things happen in certain dates all the time. But the idea isn't to get caught even in the number. It's to look at the movement of the potential for change, because numbers bring change. And numerology always is more popular during times of great transformation and change, hence your question. We're looking for answers, but the only answers we really can give is to say, please look within. Yeah, and that's it. Okay, any other questions? Yeah?
What does it mean if your it's the same as your time?
Yeah, so your personality, what's your personality number? What's your day of birth?
17 September.
Okay, 17, like this lady. So 1 and 7 is 8. So we know that 8's gift is organisation, responsibility, strength, very charming, magnetic, popular, can be quite practical, very stubborn, can be stubborn and willful, yeah. But 8's, when I look at you, because also you can see it in the facial, you can see the characteristics in the face, that they're people who need to find their own backbone and stand on their own 2 feet. But often they have people who lean on them for strength, or you lean on others for strength. But it's that idea of like becoming a tree and standing strong on your own. So it's about gaining inner strength. So the behaviour of an 8 is you want to direct. So a TV director might have a number 8 personality number. So they're very good at bossing, controlling, dominating, directing. And then you have your life path number. So if you'd like to share it, what's your date of birth? What's your date of birth? So 17th of the... Are you 17th?
I'm 17, yeah. 6.
6, that's right. 6. It's an 8 as well, okay. Oh, that's a good example, because it's the same number but used in a different way. So the aspiration of the 8 is to empower others to be strong, is to actually just be a very good mirror and reflector of important lessons in other people's lives. So people might come to you, for example, because they know you'll not tell them what to do, you'll give them insights into how they can work things out themselves. Yeah? So it's about offering, and the soul aspiration of that is about re-evaluating. It's about taking the light of spirit, taking it down through into your deepest, darkest subconscious and re-evaluating and letting go of all the murk and from these big lessons that come up in life. But you are somebody who could be a tower of strength to others. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
Have you come across the use of numbers in healing?
Well, numbers are, in the fact that everything is energy, heal on their own. But you mean actually using as... Yeah, for example, I noticed a very famous organic juice company, under their lid they had a Star of David, which nobody had seen, and I pointed it out and rang the manufacturer up, and 6 is to do with harmony. So in terms of healing and harmony and keeping food preservation, yes, 6 helps to keep everything. It could actually even perhaps preserve that product longer with a number 6. Excuse me. Equally, the 6 has to internalize, so it could get more frustrated with the lack of perfection. But yes, so numbers can be used for healing, because we look at all the chakra numbers. We have that's what we teach at the school, about different chakras on an esoteric level and a physical level.
Well, I happen to be a Dowser healer, and I use numbers to heal people, so whatever what I may do depending on the circumstances. So if there's something particularly wrong, I will dowse for a number, which I will then write, and I will apply it to the person physically in a particular place wherever I find it's appropriate.
On a piece of paper, you mean?
On a sticker.
On a sticker.
On a sticker.
So did we hear that? So
For instance, if I might get a 3-digit number, I might get an 8-digit number. Sort of working from left to right.
So it'd be good for you to know what you're doing.
Well, because the person tells me what the number is.
Oh. Yeah, I understand.
Because
You
of the
read their
dowsing.
energy.
So I'm reading their energy,
Yeah.
and they tell me the number they need.
Okay.
I then apply it. But you can use this to create good luck for the day, or to change your
Wow.
energy, depending upon what you're doing. But quite often, some of the numbers written in written in Israeli, they're actually more powerful than the equivalent
For
written in
you.
Arabic.
Okay, but that's for you.
Yes,
Yeah,
well,
for you.
it happens that when you
For
work
you.
out
No.
the energy level.
Did you hear this? This gentleman he douses for the right number during healing sessions, and then he applies it to a sticker on a certain part of the body. And you were saying how
sometimes you might use, depending upon the circumstance, not always the case, but for a particular case, you might find that the Israeli script for number 8 might be more powerful than the 8 written in Arabic script.
But
it's a question of the form, but also words have power in a similar way, but they're not as useful because numbers tend to encapsulate their own energies in a very, very defined way.
But words are energies. Words are vibrations, exactly, and they do transcribe to numerology. So I think it's whatever speaks to you. You know, it's whatever's that works for you. But if we visualize a number, we don't even need to write it. If you visualize a number now in your mind, that's going to influence your energy right now. But we're seeing numbers all the time. We're seeing words all the time. But that's wonderful. I mean, that's great. If it works, that's brilliant. But it's not kind of magic or anything. It's just tuning in. You know, if we think that's a bit mystical, it's tuning in to an energy. But
let me put it another way. What we found is, because I trained in this with a bunch of other people, and what you find is that certain numbers, for instance, if you don't want to be affected by your mobile phone, there is a number you can put inside the case of your mobile phone, which will in effect prevent the negative energy from the phone waves actually affecting your brain. And that number is constant across people.
So what number is it?
Well, I've got it written down somewhere.
Okay. Oh, you mean it's more than one?
So
there are certain numbers for
computers,
protection.
There's one for phones, and when you're operating something, you can use this just to cancel out what you might otherwise be.
But that's a mindset. You know, the fact is that numbers carry energy. All numbers carry all numbers can be protective actually. But it's the intent. It's a bit like programming it with an intent. But remember, we cannot interfere with. I mean, I can't say. It sounds amazing what you're doing, but to take it in a kind of into a broader field, that all numbers are healing and helping us all the time. It's just we're not aware of them. And by becoming more aware of numerology and the numbers in our life, then we can make more conscious decisions. It can really help us to make those best decisions. Yeah.